just went up and had my shower, and today is an exciting day because it'll be the first coat of anti-fouling to go on. Well, here's a look at the hull with that final coat of primer. You can see it a little better now that it's not so dark. And today is anti-fouling day. I'm pretty happy with how everything's turned out on the hull. Now you may have noticed in the other video clips the new thru hulls have white around them. So they are brass thru hulls. And if you want to see what's going on with all these in a little more detail, you'll just have to check out the Head Systems Part 2 video once I get that uploaded. As soon as I started painting, I noticed all kinds of junk in the paint. So I suspected that the paint might be a bit old, even though it was shaken and I stirred it. What I did was I sanded it all smooth. I tried the other can and a new roller, and it was fine. And here you go. My first coat of anti-fouling is finally on. Of course, not long after I finished the first coat, the rain started and it got quite windy. Well, since there's been this turn in the weather and I'm just waiting for this first coat of anti-fouling to set up anyways, I thought I would go over what these are. These are the zincs, and the reason we have zincs on a boat is because if there's an electric current in the water, it will cause the metal in contact with that water to break down. And zinc is a soft metal, so the current will always go after the softest metal on the boat. So these are your sacrificial zincs. And in fresh water it seems to be less of an issue than in salt water. And it also can be more or less of an issue depending on what boats are around you or how well things are grounded and what kind of current is in the water. So I know a lot of people call it electrolysis in the water, but I think it's actually electrolytic corrosion is the proper term for it. And these zincs here have been on for almost a year and a half, and that's because I've been in the water, in the fresh water, for close to that amount of time. And when I was in Cole Harbor in the salt water, I'm sure the boat next to me was letting off all kinds of current. It was a really old steel boat, and I don't even think it had moved since 1988, the guy said. So I was replacing these zincs about every 3 to 4 months. They were burning up so bad, and I had to get a diver come over and go under the boat and do this every 3 to 4 months, so it was quite costly. So being in the freshwater has been kind of a nice treat. These, like I say, are a year and a half old almost, and there's some life left in them, but while I'm up on the hard, I'll replace them, of course. Well, there are the nice new zincs on the boat. Well, I don't think there's much more I can do now, as long as this wind and rain keeps up. I'm sure some of you are wondering what I used to fill the keel with, and the product I ended up going with is called Halftime. It's not actually a marine product, but it was recommended by 2 different stores I went to as a good quality product to use for fairing the keel. It's not recommended for filling depths over 1/8 of an inch, I believe it was. And pretty much everything I was filling was about that depth or less. And it's just a lot of fairing and little tiny pitting and stuff that I needed to get done. So this met that requirement. It's not a structural filler. There was another one I looked at. I think it was called Duraglass, and that actually has fiberglass filaments in it. But I wasn't needing that level of strength. I just needed something that was strong, but easy to sand, easy to work with, and would fill all that pitting and stuff that I had in the keel. One of the things I was told is that it does have to be sealed, which is why I bought the primer. And based on the primer I used, it says 2 coats. I decided to go 4 coats. So why not double it? It's not a big area to do. And it's all sealed up now, and as you saw, the first coat of anti-fouling is on. So like I said, it's not a structural compound, but it worked well. I'm happy with how it turned out, and I guess next time I haul the boat out, I'll see if I can stand behind using this again. The primer I went with, of course, I poured all the paint out of it went into the tray on the name side, but it's Primacon, and it's an underwater primer. It's actually really good for metals and things like that underwater, and this is an underwater primer, but it's also really good to put over existing anti-fouling paint and to use as a base. I found it went on really well. We'll see again if this is the right product. I did talk to a couple people in the yard, and everyone sort of says this is the product to use, Primacon underwater sealer or underwater primer. So that's what the silver grayish paint was on the hull. And then for my anti-fouling, I went with, gotta remember the name now, Micron CSC. It's from Interlux, and I had black paint on before, but this dark blue, I think it's called dark blue. It's actually a discontinued color, and the store here had 2 cans. I guess a lot of boats here need more than 2 cans, so they gave me a little bit of a discount on it. It's getting really windy out there. Something just flew by my window, and I'm about 10 feet up. The cost of this was about $70 a tin, and I went through 2 of these, well, 1.5. This I managed to get, it was regularly $250 a gallon, and I got it for $200 a gallon just because it was a discontinued color. And I'm going to end up using 2 of these. And the primer, I used 1.5, and this is $100 Canadian per gallon. So it's not cheap paint, and it's not cheap filler, but I guess that's why you're doing these projects and choosing the best products that you can. You don't want to really cheap out and get really cheap filler and really cheap paint. I just want to strongly recommend everyone does their own research and choose the products that they feel are best based on their research and people they talk to in their area. And hopefully, like I say, next time I haul the boat out, I'll be happy with how everything held up. But that's going to be at least a year from now, so I can't really comment on that just yet.